So one of the things that I like about the profit first system is that you can be profitable in any economy. That could be the height of 2020 or the lowest of today or 2008, right? It's having a system that creates that intentional profitability. It's what's important because we're basing upon a predetermined percentage.
For too long, talented experts with a service based business like coaches, consultants, and freelancers have been losing out to the often inferior competition. For just one reason, they struggle to communicate the true value of what they offer. This is made all the more challenging if you have a quieter personality or are not already fluent in how to build a profitable business. If you can relate, I'm excited that you're here because I believe that value whispering can help. It's the art of knowing your true value, then weaving this through every amazing thing that you do so you can naturally stand apart from your competitors, feel aligned in everything that you do, and have an impact that matters. Welcome. I'm your host, Melitta Campbell, and I'm excited to be your guide in mastering the art of value whispering. Today on the show, I'm speaking with Susanne Mariga, author of the book Profit First for Minority Business Enterprises. If you've ever worked hard and felt happy with the revenue you've created, but found that at the end of the month or at the end of the year, there's nothing left to pay yourself, you are going to love Susanne's simple financial advice and guidance today. Being profitable is all about knowing what you want and then putting simple, intentional strategies in place to help ensure that that is what your business delivers for you. How? Susanne is here to tell us. But before we dive in, I want to invite you to join the Dream Clients Club. It's the free community that accompanies this show and beyond. It's where you can continue to discuss the themes from today's episode, attend weekly live marketing and mindset masterclasses with me, access business coaching tools and training, and be part of a wonderfully supportive community of like minds. You can find the Dream Clients Club by visiting melittacampbell.com/club. The best part is it's completely free to join. So come and join us at melittacampbell.com/club. Okay, on to today's show. Hi, Susanna. It's wonderful to have you with us on the show today.
Hi, Melitta. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here with you.
Yeah, and I'm excited to kick off the new year with a discussion about a really important topic. And I'm so pleased that you are here to talk to us about it, because when it comes to talking about profit and how we can be profitable, what we can do to safeguard our future no matter what happens in our business, how we can really make sure that we have those funds and our finances are sorted. I know that's your expertise and it's such an important thing. And I think profit first is such a key topic to be discussing. So thank you for being here with us today to dive into that. But before we do get into all of juicy profit talk, I would love it if you could share with the audience a little bit about how you got here today, because I think you've had really quite an interesting journey.
Well, thank you. I'd love to talk about that. I started my business about 16 years ago. I had just left my corporate job. I had done quite a career in public accounting, and I had just had my daughter. And literally, I was on the airplane. I was probably about maybe 6 months pregnant, and I was flying to Toronto because I was responsible for the Canadian operations at the time. And I was flying every week from Houston to Toronto. And I remember being about 6 months pregnant and the flight attendant walking by, and she goes, "You need to put down that armrest, that armrest that's part of your chair." And I remember trying to put down the armrest. And every time I would try to push it down, it would hit my stomach, right? Because I was so pregnant. And I probably wasn't supposed to be on the plane at the time because, you're in that third trimester, but nobody asked me how pregnant I was. So I just got on the plane and it hit me that my life was about to change. I was about to become a first time mother, and having this career of flying every single week was probably not going to leave much time with me seeing my little girl. And so literally that opportunity to start entrepreneurship just fell into my lap because here I was about to be a new mother. I still love the world of accounting and tax, and I still felt like I had a gift that I wanted to share with the world. And it was interesting because, I remember starting off and I was so excited. I was like, I'm going to change the world of small business accounting and tax for all these entrepreneurs. And I'm going to do it in a way that it's going to make it very affordable for these entrepreneurs to really assess like knowledge that these really large companies pay thousands of dollars for every single year. And what I found was after doing that for about 3 years, meaning super serving my clients and dropping my prices as low as I could, the very reason why I started my business, I wasn't really getting that. I hardly got to see my daughter at that point. I was working really long hours. And the sad part was I didn't have anything to show for it, right? I didn't have anything to show for it because at the end of the day, when you're working from a volume perspective, meaning that you're getting all these clients, but the margins aren't well, you really can't afford to hire anybody. And the only one that's going to work for free is you. And unfortunately, I was starting to get into corporate debt. And I remember like it was one night, my husband literally sat me down and he's like, you know what, Susanne, I think you're going to be better off if you just get a job. And it made me sad because he was absolutely right, right? Because, in my job, I had steady pay. I probably would have been able to get off at 5. And it hit me that, I really needed to change something about my business. And I really needed to look at what was important to me. And I really needed to make sure that I figured out what was important so that I made every action align with what I was doing. And that's where I really fell into the concept of profit first. And Profit First is a book by Mike McAllowitz. And what it does is it literally, just like it says, it teaches entrepreneurs to take their profit first. And what happens is you allocate to your profit account because as entrepreneurs, we need to be profitable. We need to show why we're working. We need to allocate to owner's pay because reality is we are our most valued player, right? When you step out of your business, there's nobody to take your place, right? There's only one Melitta, one Susanne. Once we're gone, the business may continue to operate, but not without really that essence that we bring to it. And then, of course, because we're successful, right? We've got profit, we've got owner's pay, we're going to have a tax obligation. So instead of scrambling and going, how am I going to figure out how am I going to pay last year's taxes with this year's money? We're going to put away money as we go into this tax bank account. And finally, whatever's left over is going to go to operating expenses into this operating expense bank account. And literally implementing this system for me was able to change the course of my business and my life. And today I help many clients implement the system in their business so that they can really achieve why they're working.
Yeah, I love that. And I can resonate with your story so much because, well, my daughter's about to turn 16, and that was the reason that I started my business as well. But like you, I realized at one point, this is not sustainable. I'm going against every reason I started my business, and I'm flat out exhausted. I had a lot of money coming in. I did the opposite. I was putting my prices up because I had so much demand, but they weren't the clients I wanted to be working with. It wasn't the business that I really felt so excited about. And I didn't have, like you, didn't have the time I wanted with my family, which is really the point. But I spent 8 years before I realized I need to change direction. And so well done for realizing that in 3. And I've read the book Profit First, and even as someone who isn't necessarily a numbers person, I love that it's so straightforward, so readable, makes so much sense, and it really makes a difference. And I've done the first, and I was like, I can do this myself. It was really groundbreaking. And I see behind you there, you've got the original Profit First, and then you've got Profit First for minority business enterprises. If you're in a minority group, do you need a different approach, or what's the different thinking there?
So Profit First is an amazing system. And this book, Profit First to Minority Business Enterprises, which I wrote in collaboration with Mike McAllowitz, it's the Profit First concept as part of the Profit First family, but it's geared really to minority business enterprises. And what that means is 51% owned by a minority. And it takes the Profit First concept, but it goes into a bit more in-depth detail. And the reason why is, Profit First, it's a very simple methodology, right? It's the movement of cash. And if I move cash to bank accounts, I'm going to naturally increase profits, right? I'm going to have profits if I do that physical movement, right? That's just physics, right? That's just the law of movement there. But really, when you start to apply profit first, what you find at some point, it's more than about money, right? Because if you're not charging the right price, if you don't have the right margins, you're not going to have profitability, right? You're not going to be able to afford the people that can deliver that quality services. And a lot of times, as minority owned businesses and even Gen 1 businesses, what I'm going to call it, businesses that don't necessarily, we're first time entrepreneurs, first ones in our family to do this, potentially to even go to college, right? We don't know what we don't know, right? And so this book really is aimed towards, I would call equaling the playing field, right? It's teaching us the things that you may not have been exposed to. So how do you figure out what that target price is, right? How do you know what I should be selling at in order to reach those different allocation buckets? It teaches you from a strategy standpoint, that 80-20 rule. 20% of your customers are producing 80% of your profit. How do I figure out where to find that intersection, that Pareto principle in my business? And so it talks about that. There's a mindset element too, as a woman of color, I may go into a room often where nobody else looks like me, right? But it's really overcoming my own intimidation and stepping forward with that and talking about the experiences. And one of the things that I did in my book too was, I think that too many times it's easy to point to the statistics. It's too easy to point to those that did not make it. But what I did in my book was I focused on those that did, those that grew $1 million plus businesses, profitable businesses. And I said, what did you do specifically that really contributed to that success? We focused on the outliers and we allowed them to tell their stories, and we feature them in the book. And again, because there were so many glimpses of wisdom of, they realized it was in their head how they were looking at themselves. And once they got over what was in their head, they were able to really bridge gaps and cross bridges that they never would have imagined, right? And one person talked about looking at the world from a pie perspective. So many people are worried about my competition. They're going to take my pie. They're going to take my piece. And he's like, if you look at it as a mathematic equation, when you multiply by pi, you've got unlimited growth. If you're talking about pie, we're just growing the pie and making it bigger, right? Versus having a competitive spirit. How do we collaborate and create more? And so really, it's a book about implementing profit first, but really taking it to a whole different level.
Sounds like you've tried to bridge the financial education gap. And we've heard this before on the show, that particularly with women, that we don't have the same financial upbringing that many of the men have. And so that there is this gap in just being comfortable with money, knowing how to handle numbers, knowing what to do. And in a previous business, I used to be a business coach for another company. And we had this joke that as soon as someone's husband joined, they had spreadsheets. But, it's not a natural thing. Women don't think, oh, spreadsheets. There are some, but, it just became this big in joke, but more because they knew, well, you need to get organized and structured and have everything tracked. So I really like that you're bridging that gap, taking the profit first concept that step further. So it sounds like it's more, well, not just a practical guide, but really an inspirational guide as well, like really cheering you on. You can do this. Look, they did it. And this is how you can do that too. So it sounds like a wonderful book. I'm looking forward to getting that.
Thank you.
So I was wondering, you mentioned there about feeling comfortable in being able to charge these prices as well. How important do you think psychology is when it comes to profit first?
Profit versus psychology is extremely important, and I think that it probably was one of the biggest changes in my business too with that. I love, Simon Sinek has a concept of start with why. And when you're going through a coaching certification, one of the things that they teach you is, there's the stick figure and he's got a head and he's got a body, and his head is a little bit more complex than a circle, right? It's his mind, right? It's his subconscious mind and his conscious mind, and his conscious mind actually impacts his subconscious mind, meaning that what he's thinking about, his thinking mind, starts to impact how he feels, his emotional mind being the subconscious mind. And although this is simple, it's actually not, because these thoughts are triggering emotions, which are triggering chemical reactions in our bodies, right? It's triggering, you guys remember from psychology class in high school, those dendrites and synapses, right? And these dendrites and synapses are creating actions, and these actions are creating results. And what that means is what we're thinking about is creating the results that we experience, right? So if we're thinking about, I'm going to super serve this client, I don't want to hear no, I want this client, I need to have more sales, right? No matter, I need to Black Friday this, get my prices down as low as I can, right? I'm going to achieve more sales, but it's going to cost me my profit, because that's not what I'm going after, right? My thoughts are increasing sales, and it's creating dendrite synapses to create revenue, but not necessarily profit. And so, when we start with why, and we figure out what is it that we want, right? I started my business to spend time with my children. I started my business to have a better life than the one I grew up with. I started this business to be able to have impact on the world. And now when I'm creating that picture of why did I start this picture, and I'm not talking like a black and white, I'm talking like a Polaroid image, like one of those candid camera pictures we took when we were kids that actually spits out in color. I'm tasting the vacations that I'm sending my kids on, and we're traveling the world to go see Melitta together. I'm picturing what this looks like, and I'm thinking about this, and this is creating emotions, that's creating dendrites and synapses, that's now creating those results, right? And again, it's because I'm clear and I'm focused on what I want. And I'm creating those chemical reactions because I'm consciously choosing the things that I want and I want my business produce.
Yeah, I think we can so quickly forget what it is that we really want, why we started in the first place. And as we both experienced in the early days, if you don't focus on that, then it doesn't happen. Nothing happens by accident. We have to really consciously create and actively manage these things if we're going to have the results that we want. And I think most guests on the show have learned that the hard way. Hopefully, listeners can bypass that step. Yeah. So if a company is looking to maximize their profit, we talked there about profit and revenue, two very different things. What's the first thing that they should be doing?
So the first thing that it would start with is realizing what works and what doesn't work, right? We talked about that Pareto principle. We talked about that 80-20 rule, that 20% that's producing 80%. As a CPA by background, certified public accountant by background, I've seen too many financials that come to me, and the first line says sales revenue. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? Right? What product were you selling? What service were you offering? And which produced the most revenue? And not only produce the most revenue, which produced the most gross margins, right? Meaning your revenue less your cost to produce is your gross margin. And so first of all, if I'm spending a lot of my time, if I'm spending 80% of my energy on just 20% of my results, I need to identify what that is. And so having that clear accounting system that really shows me what that is a huge, huge asset for that. The next thing is, having the cash management system. We talk about profit first, right? Creating that intentional profitability. As an accountant, too many people come to me at the end of the year and they are on pins and needles. They're like, how much do I owe for taxes? And being a CPA, I was always flabbergasted. Like, you don't know how much you made all year round. And there are too many entrepreneurs that are in that situation. So creating a system where you create that intentional profitability, where you're transferring physically money to profit, money to owner's pay, money to reserve for taxes, right? Because that's where you're going to create that intentional outcome, right? Through those actions. So creating actions in a cash management system that aligns with your goals, right? And then the next thing is actually looking at those expense items, right? And going, what really produces ROI? What do I really use? One of the things that I get in trouble with, Melitta, is, I get in the auto renewal trap all the time. I start subscribing to a software, and year after year, it's auto renewed. And as we get busy with life, we stop noticing that it's even there. And suddenly we're paying for things we don't even need anymore. So making it part of your practice where every quarter you're periodically reviewing, hey, what am I paying for? What is going through auto renew that I need to cancel, right? That I'm not using. During COVID, we had an amazing magazine subscription at our office. I remember walking in our office and it was like probably May 2020. And I was like, all these magazines were like stacked. They weren't even open. They didn't even have a crease in them, Melita. And there was no people there. There was no people there because everybody had went home and they were online, right? And I'm like, why are we paying for these magazines? We need to stop the subscription now. They don't need to be auto renewing. And so again, what am I using? What am I not using that I'm paying for? And really going through that fine tooth and auditing that. So those are just three easy steps to really start with getting started on Profit First.
Yeah, I love that. And I did a review recently of my subscriptions and I saw one, I don't even know what it is. I'm like, I have no idea. So I just cancelled that and saved myself, yeah, a nice little pot of money by the end of the year. With most things, particularly when it comes to mindset and things like that, we're always saying, the first step to change is awareness. And it sounds like with your accounting, it's the same, just getting aware of what's coming in, where it's coming from, what is working, where your money is going out. And so you can start to make conscious shifts in that to make it more profitable and make it work for you and start to get a grasp on what you need to change or do more of. So, yeah, I love that. Nice, simple start point. Thank you. And we are facing uncertain times right now. So we may be going into recession. We may be, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't think anyone knows what's going to happen next. How can we, or is there anything we can do to protect our finances or set ourselves up so whatever happens in the future, we don't have to stress about money, that profit is still there?
So one of the things that I like about the Profit First system is that you can be profitable in any economy. And that could be the height of 2020 or the lowest of today or 2008, right? You can be profitable in any economy, right? It's having a system that creates that intentional profitability. It's what's important because we're using percentages. We're using a percentage of revenue that's going to go to profit, a percentage of owner pay that's going to go to owner's pay, a percentage of revenue that's going to go to tax, right? And we're basing upon a predetermined percentage. And I have something as a gift for your audience, Melita, called a profit map. And what that does is it's a study that was done by Profit First Professionals, that's a corporation. And it shows what a healthy company looks like. And it's different depending on the phase of the business. So if you're a small business under $250,000 in revenue, your percentages that are going to profit, owners pay tax, operating expenses, it's going to be very different than a company that's 10 million plus in revenue. But you're able to draw this map down and see where are you today and compare it against where you ideally should be, right? In a healthy company. And then you can start to work your way. You may not be able to start day one at those percentages, but you can increase it over time. Maybe you start for 1% profit if you're not there, or if you're already at 1%, you can go to 2%, right? But it's about starting small and then making incremental movements to get to your goal.
Yeah, I love that. Start small, make those shifts, get that awareness in the first place. And you were talking about the tool before we came live, and it's fantastic. And I love that it works for whatever size of business you have, and you can start to see what should you be aiming for, what's a good benchmark for you, because often we get this awareness and we're like, well, is that good? I know that this number looks good, but is that optimal? So I love that you've given this tool to really help with that. So we'll add that link in the show notes so people can click through to, and we'll come back to it at the end how they can find that. So when it comes to managing tax strategies and some of these strategies that the high net worth entrepreneurs use, I know you've got some ideas of some out of the box strategies that people can start thinking about. Are you able to share some of those with us?
Absolutely. And Melina, this is going to also depend on where the audience is too, because different countries are going to have different tax laws. And I know that you serve an international audience, which is really awesome. But I'll talk more general in this case. And I think one of the worst things that entrepreneurs can do from a tax perspective is that they're going to cut their ankles to hurt. In the US, we call them Uncle Sam's ankles, right? Meaning that they're going to go out and buy these huge trucks because their accountant said you can buy a truck and get like a $25,000 write-off and your doctor's office, why do you need a truck? Right. But instead of what I'm going to do is I'm going to challenge you to use tax strategy to build your wealth. right? Build your equity through tax strategy. In the US, one of the things that we have is we have the opportunity to put away for retirement, right? If you're a closely held company in a solo 401k plan, you can put away almost $66,000 into that plan. And these are tax deductions, right? These are tax deductions, these are write offs. But what you've done is you've literally passed money from your right hand to your left. I got a tax deduction for putting money into my retirement account. Another thing that you can do is, I like to look at, how am I preparing the next generation for their role in this workforce one day? And I started working for my dad when I was 14 years old. Working for my dad taught me that I might be able to have a business one day. And he hired me when I was 14 to be a bookkeeper in his accounting firm. And so here I was learning how to do bookkeeping, how I was learning how to do simple tax returns. And when I was graduating from college, going to work with Arthur Andersen, number one firm in the country at the time, all my friends were just learning how to read financials. And I've been doing that for the last 10 years. It was the easiest degree out there for me, right? I tell people, I study less, party more, and got straight A's. But that's what happens. It takes 10 years to become a master. So start your children early. Give them that gift of apprenticeship. Let them learn from your company. Like, what is mom and dad doing to market their company? Maybe they can learn some bookkeeping working for you. Maybe they can do some social media for you, but give them that gift of apprenticeship and pay them for it. Run it through your payroll system. Allow them to start building work credits into the retirement system. And one, it's a tax write-off for mom and dad, but I bet that child is in a lower tax bracket, right? I know in the US, if that child is paid less than the standard deduction, that's tax-free income for that child. And so I've literally shifted them from my 37% tax bracket into a 0% tax bracket. And now my child can go out and pay for her own dance classes, pay for his own soccer cleats, pay for her own dance competitions. By the way, those outfits are very, very expensive. There's a different one for every dance. She can pay for those herself. She can start to fund her own college fund. She can do what we call in the US a Roth IRA, which is an after-tax retirement account, which happens to be 0%. She can start building for her own retirement where she can later use the money to pay for college or to like buy her first home, right? Appreciation tax free. And so there's a lot of things that you can do to start preparing that generational wealth while at the same time reducing your own tax liability.
Yeah, I love that. And I guess for different countries, they may have to speak to their accountant, but it sounds like there's always some interesting opportunities that we may not be aware of and may be missing out of. And I really love that concept of bringing your kids into your business. My kids have been in my business since they were really tiny, and they were just like sticking stickers on, or they were helping on their sort of cardboard computers, and so they weren't actually helping, but as a toddler they were part of what I was doing. And so yeah, their business understanding has been incredible, and in fact they've used that to raise for charities. So that entrepreneurial spirit, and we don't know what their kids are going to go into, what jobs, but we do know communication, collaboration, problem solving, all of these kind of entrepreneurial skills are going to be the skills that are going to be essential. So we can gift that to them already. And I love that example of your dad. He really gave you the ticket to party. Like, wow, that's so cool. And it's something so fun as well to bring your kids in, and it's a special moment you can share. So thank you for sharing that idea.
Thank you.
Susanne, you have shared so much value. And I love that you've helped us get started understanding how we can be more profitable, what strategies we can start to think about, how we can think about our mindset as well. Don't leave that out of the equation. If things aren't working, then look there as well. So we've covered so much. But is there anything else you feel we haven't touched on that people really need to know to start getting really comfortable with their finances?
I think finances, it has to start with why, right? I think every decision that we make has to be led with why. And at the end of the day, I think as entrepreneurs, we have to think about, you know, what would make this at the end of the day when everything is shut down a win for me? Like, what would winning look like for me at this? And so it's important to start with that vision and then work backwards from there.
I love that. So powerful. And I'd say when you start with why, it gives you those tracks, and it kind of gives you a framework to work within and make sure that you're staying on track and getting what we want from our business, which is the point really. So thank you so much. Susanne, if people want to know more about you, about your book, about Profit First, all of these great things, where's the best place for them to go?
So the best place to go would be, I would say, start with the roadmap. Start with finding out, what does a healthy company look like? So you would go to www.profitmap.co and download that map. And that's a great place to get started.
Wonderful. Great. I'll put that, and I'll also put links underneath to your website and everything so people can find you. And thank you again for sharing such great information and really kickstarting a profitable 2024.
Thank you, Melitta.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope you have found this episode valuable and are all set to start becoming intentionally profitable. If you have enjoyed this episode and you have a minute to help other business owners grow, then do share this show with your network and business besties. You can drop them an email or share this episode on social media. And if you leave a review for the show on iTunes, this does a lot to help more entrepreneurs find the show. And once again, I would love for you to come and join us in the Dream Clients Club. And I'd love to welcome you to our next value session, the weekly live marketing masterclasses, and to hear your thoughts on this episode. It's completely free to join the community. You will find us at melittacampbell.com/club. There are a lot more tools, tips, and insights coming up for you in the next episode. So don't miss next week's show, or better still, subscribe now so you never miss your weekly dose of inspiration. I'm Melitta Campbell, your business coach and value whisperer, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again in the next episode. Bye.